Joining us next is Alex Keros. Now, Alex is an interesting guy. We'll have a lot to talk to him about, some of the things he does. But Alex is part of the General Motors Advanced Technology team, and also they'll be rolling out some other things they're announcing here recently to talk about how those things play a role and how we use less gas, get more electric cars on the road, and also how we change the paradigm when it comes to urban transportation. So without further ado here, Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Ed. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, thank you. Well, we have something in common, which you didn't know before you actually had this conversation. But Bison Creek, my company, and previous companies I've been involved with as an investor and also as an entrepreneur, we actually imported the first all-electric SUV into the United States. Didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't. Well, congratulations to helping us advocates.
I wouldn't go that far because Tesla beat us up pretty bad, and the U.S. Department of Energy beat us up pretty bad because we couldn't get $500 million, but we won't talk about that. So sometimes you have some advantages you can't really overcome for the most part. But the thing of it is that it's interesting when you think about electric transportation. It's not necessarily new, is it?
No, it's certainly been around for hundreds of years. If the folks who want to check their history book, some of the very first cars on the road were actually electric vehicles, and certainly over the last 10 years, General Motors has been pretty instrumental in sort of reimagining the next wave of electrification. And so what's neat is to see how much of a sort of ecosystem approach that a lot of us organizations who are trying to build this together are actually working through. So when you think about this, it's you have drivers who need to purchase the car. You need charging stations to be able to fuel and move those vehicles around. You need users. You need constituents like cities, like the city of Austin that we're working with today, and others, to really put in sort of as I like to say, the right recipe for it to work. It's not going to happen overnight, and it takes a lot of different efforts to bring electrification to the market.
This is true. I think the biggest thing you mentioned in that information there was the fact you talk about an ecosystem. One of the challenges that we had, obviously coming out in 2008, 2009, this is pre-Volt, pre-Leaf, and really the Tesla Roadster hadn't been invented yet. Fisker was already out with their car, but it still was, people knew it was too big when they saw it. That said, one of the things that stands out was you had the infrastructure didn't exist at that time. You didn't have charging stations. You didn't have places where you could support either a hydrogen car or an electric car. So you were kind of ahead of the curve. Thinking about this is pre-Volt, and that's obviously pre-Bolt too because you guys are in there. But thinking about what it takes to change the paradigm when you look at the electrification as far as transportation is concerned, what do you see as the biggest psychological hurdle that people have to deal with?
I don't think there's one hurdle, Ed. I think it's a combination of putting all of these pieces together. When we think about people and the way they purchase or use a car, whether it's purchased for their individual use or like Maven and our car sharing brands, people just have to get comfortable with the technology, and that doesn't happen every day. You don't make a vehicle purchase. Most of us may get maybe once every 3 years or once every 4 or 5 years. So when we're talking about the buying cycle, we have to really talk to the people when they're in that moment. Similarly, their friends and neighbors need to believe in the technology to reinforce some of their choices. They need to see charging stations in and around where they work, where they live. Can they easily put it in their single-family residence, or are they in an apartment building where they have to spend a little bit more time thinking about it? Or in the case of Maven, we're renting out vehicles to the folks in rideshare and delivery packages services. They're using that as a tool to participate in the gig economy. So, again, in my mind, it's never been about one individual thing. It's about putting all of these pieces together. So when a consumer or a user goes to make that choice, they're there. And one of the neat things about Maven and the gig economy is if we're putting them in the backseat of a Ride Austin sort of TNC, people are getting experience with an EV, right? They're seeing it and seeing how it interacts. So I think there's a lot of different aspects, and I think there's multiple legs of the stool, whether it's private industry like ourselves, whether it's cities and utilities. We have to come together to build that ecosystem. So I think the most important thing is we spend a lot of time getting it right and spend a lot of time working with our friends and neighbors to increase people's awareness about the technology.
We have about a minute left before our next break here, but one thing I wanted to get out there was we looked at our research at the time would indicate that these types of vehicles were best used in an urban environment where you had short bursts of distances where they were typically under 200 miles a day, which most people don't drive 200 miles a day anyway, even if they're commuting. In your case, I guess they're not coming up from Buda, but that's another story. But the thing of it is that we looked at it that way as a way in which we could actually create a vehicle or supply a vehicle that could support the needs of urban communication and also support the needs for cafe standards. In addition to that, you had the Clean Air Act and some other things. In addition, you had lower use of fossil fuels. So that was the idea behind our car. We're going to come back on the other side and spend take a deep dive into Maven and what you're doing in Austin to make sure that all these things are coming forward. Hang on just a second. We'll be right back after this break. Again, this is Ed Baxter, Bison Creek Capital, sitting in for Michael York. We'll be right back after this break with Alex Keros. Welcome back to CEO Money. This is Ed Baxter sitting in for Michael Yorber. We're speaking to Alex Keros of GM's Advanced Technical Vehicle Division and also of Maven. Alex, when we left off, we were talking about some of the things from an infrastructure standpoint and some of the things that were necessary to facilitate the outreach and growth of the EV market. One thing I would ask you, because we've seen this in a couple of ways, because I remember there was some pushback before when we were looking at these vehicles, because obviously nobody really, there were people who didn't want to build them. How important is it to have someone like General Motors or a large car corporation take a proactive role in pushing out the use of these vehicles?
Well, I think it demonstrates not only GM's leadership, but I think leadership across the sector that electrification and sort of reimagining mobility overall is an important piece of how we want to build our communities. So for me and my responsibility on the team is to really help shepherd that responsibility and bring together what we were talking about, the ecosystem and the right partners, and make sure that as much as GM makes sure we have the right tools in our toolbox to support mobility overall, we're also good listeners with the cities that we're working with.
Well, obviously, having a good partner like the city of Austin joining Maven, or you guys joining Austin as far as the electrification of the city, give us some ideas about what that partnership looks like and what you guys expect to accomplish from it.
Yeah, so Maven, for those listeners that don't know about it, is a startup within General Motors. Its focus is around sort of being a mobility platform. So everything from a traditional car sharing service, if you will, with Maven City, through Maven Gig, which we announced here in the city of Austin. Maven Gig essentially is the ability for folks who are participating in the freelance gig economy to really get a vehicle without owning one. They rent it from us, and they can go use it within ride-hailing services, package delivery services, and really allows them the flexibility to sort of jump onto the platform and jump off. And what was unique about what we're launching today with the city of Austin is we're doing that with the lens of electrification. So the 20 all-electric Bolt EVs that we're putting on the platform today are going to be available for those folks who want to participate in the gig economy. And so what we're hoping to do with the city is build an appreciation and understanding about how these vehicles are moving around. It's great to get more electric vehicles out there. I think you said it really well about sort of the urban environment and how they can be beneficial. These vehicles, the Bolt EVs in Maven Gig, do something over 100 miles plus per day. Great for electrification, great for zero emissions. And it's also great for the infrastructure that's necessary to go out there because we use public charging. Our drivers are able to leverage that and build the business case associated with it. So with the partnership in essence with the city of Austin is to holistically look at that. So how do we reimagine the way we work with the city? Is there data associated with some of those vehicles running around? Are they meaningful to the city? How do we think about redesigning curb space all the way to how do we get more charging stations out there? So it's really designed to be an open dialogue between our General Motors and Maven teams, as well as the city about some of the challenges that the city of Austin has, and some of the opportunities, frankly, the city of Austin has with their mobility environment.
Look at it just from a big data standpoint. The one thing that seems to be interesting to me is just that itself. It seems you have an open laboratory where you can just look at and discover some things that may not necessarily be available in a controlled environment, where you have an uncontrolled environment, where all of a sudden you're in a position where you have the data that you take from the activity that goes on in Austin, whether it's car use, range, parking, electrification itself, and how many people actually adopt the program, in addition to the amount of people who actually do come in as part of it. How does that data play a role in your decision-making process going forward for new projects?
Well, as I said, Maven is really envisioned to be a mobility platform, and so the data will help inform how we think about moving people around, as well as open up conversations with cities like Austin around how we should be thinking about it. At the end of the day, I would argue cities own their own streets, not companies like me, and we want to make sure our products and services are well integrated as we sort of reimagine how the sort of multimodal environment, right? Everything from active mobility and walking and biking through ride-hailing and single-occupant vehicles through mass transit. So we imagine our team has a role to play in weaving some of that conversation, and we also know that our data can help inform how Maven and General Motors redesigns its sort of products and services for that environment.
Well, obviously, with Maven and General Motors using Austin as a living laboratory, doesn't it also give you the opportunity to take that same platform and adopt it for different areas and give you guys a chance to spread the message and to grow to more than 20 EVs, especially the Bolt, which now we know the Bolt is the largest selling EV out there, to my knowledge, more so than the others that people might know about. Those things play a role in the adoption that you guys have in other areas. Do you see that as part of the selling point for Maven and for General Motors going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I right now, the good news is these 20 are joining a fleet of over 400 on East Coast and West Coast markets, and the reason we've picked Austin is because they're great partners. The mayor's team, the transportation department, Austin Energy are all folks who are willing and share sort of our philosophy of making sure we work together. But you're right, we're sort of, our goal isn't 20 cars. Our goal is really how do we help the mobility system, and so we can grow the fleet, we can grow the services, we can learn from what we're doing on the coast, and more importantly, we can learn what we're doing in your backyard in Austin, and then sort of grow that. So yeah, the intention here is to be sort of a learning laboratory, but do it with an eye on creating businesses that work, and help create some value for our shareholders. But at the flip side, make sure that we're creating value for the stakeholders in the city that will be using these products.
Alex, in looking at the way Maven works and also with the Bolts themselves and also General Motors, and this is kind of a corporate question, I guess, how important is it for the public to know that you guys are as disruptive as you are and you're as forward thinking as you are, and how that plays a role in your place in society going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as somebody who joined General Motors about 13 years ago, as a young sort of up-and-comer within the company, and I had a lot of friends who were saying, why are you going there? I think it's really neat to see how our company is transformed, and the commitment that we have to not only building the best products in the world and delivering the best sort of value proposition to our customers, but also, teams like Maven, the one that I'm on right now, are really designed to go fast and reimagine quickly and build, systems for that next 100 years. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty neat time to be working within General Motors and seeing sort of this broader perspective. And more importantly, I'm certainly biased, but we got some of the best teams in the world doing some of the best stuff that's out there when it comes to mobility.
Well, it is GM. Let's keep it real about that. When you indicated Maven drivers, for the most part, have driven about 6.5 million miles, saving about 250,000 gallons of gas. I mean, do you have any other metrics that you can share with us that kind of give us a feel for what the actual goal is as far as miles driven and potential gas savings?
No, it's actually, the goal isn't miles driven or gas saving. It's actually building a sustainable long-term business model for these. So we're well on our way. As we build the model for the business model for Maven, I think it's equally important to make sure that we're building successful mobility models in those communities as we're working in. So, I like to say we have a North Star and we're marching to it. But this is really about designing products and services for those communities that really need them, and being able to move fast to adapt to it. And I think the Austin City partnership is really a testament to being able to put the right partners in the room and help develop and iterate fast, so we can solve some of these mobility challenges.
Once again, we're kind of up against it, but you mentioned the Maven product itself. Where does the pricing start for people who might want to use them?
Yeah, so the Bolt EV it starts at $229 per week. That includes the price of the vehicle, if you will, as well as maintenance, insurance, and something that our customers really, really value with the Bolt EV. It actually includes access to the main charging networks in your backyard. And so here in Austin, it's the Plug-in Everywhere network from Austin Energy, as well as EVgo. And so people participating in the gig economy have a really well-defined number now, right? They know exactly what their weekly cost is going to be. They don't have any hidden costs in it, and more importantly, for folks who are in that sort of realm of their life, they can easily get out. So it's really a weekly price, and if it works for you, stay in it, and a lot of our customers do. And if it doesn't, great, get out, and we can move on and try a new customer. Again, about that learning and iteration and making sure that we have products and services for those who are participating in that sort of dynamic of their life.
Alex, got to jump in there. We're out of time. I appreciate you joining us. Can we go to Maven.com and get information on this particular project?
Yeah, Maven.com. You can go to mavengig.maven.com. So just search Maven car sharing, and a lot of folks will see exactly what we're talking about today.
Perfect, Alex. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate the information you've given us, and we look forward to seeing Maven in Dallas, too.
Thanks, Ed.
That was Alex Keros of GM Advanced Vehicle Technology. We'll be right back on the other side of this break with David Williams of PageTrader.com. This section brought to you by Notify CRM. The Notify CRM is the CRM of the future.